We've all heard of Jamie Oliver, one of the most famous chefs in the UK and also one of the most well-known socialist warriors that we have in this country. A few years ago, an anti-freedom and pro-socialist mentality began in the West in general and is now taking over the whole political narrative, including our Conservative government. Jamie Oliver started his campaign by fighting to introduce a sugar tax on fizzy drinks. And when we complain, saying, one, there's absolutely no evidence that this has ever worked in any country that's been introduced, and two, this could go too far if we give that much power to big government. And we were told that we were scaremongering and it couldn't go too far, and that's just where they're going to stop. Eventually, the government introduced the bill, and Theresa May made that one of her flagship policies.
This, I believe, will travel to Canada, Australia, all these weak, we want to get prime ministers, we want them to grow some balls and start doing stuff that actually affects child health. I think today's profound. It's about getting your hands around big business and caring like a parent, not a politician. So
yeah. But also as a parent, Jamie, do you feel, there are a lot of other, if we're just talking about drinks, there are a lot of other ways that children in particular ingest huge amounts of sugar. And I'm thinking of milkshakes and fruit juices in particular. Would you like to see this extended to them?
I think we could have gone into milk. I need to I've been so excited that I haven't been able to unpack it and really interrogate it. I think we should have, any milk products with added sugar should have been in the same bundle, in my opinion.
Now, with Theresa May being in power, she began to introduce more limitations over our individual liberties over the last couple of years, with more proposals coming forward, including extra tax on milkshakes, removing cartoon characters on cereal boxes, reducing pizza sizes and pizza toppings, and so on. But first, let's start with the evidence. According to Daniel Pryor of the Adam Smith Institute, none of this justifies measures like the sugary drinks tax. Most people simply pay up, or switch to other high-calorie drinks, buy their sugary drinks from elsewhere, or downgrade to less expensive own brands. This is exactly what happened across the United States when soda taxes were introduced, with no evidence that their implementation in Mexico or Chile budged overall calorie consumption. Any minuscule reductions are poorly targeted. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has pointed out that those who consume the most sugar are the least likely to change their behavior in response to the tax. This is why we move on to behavioral change. As for behavioral change, this is usually small to non-existent because the products being taxed are price inelastic. Soft drink taxes have remarkably little impact on soft drink consumption, let alone calorie consumption, and have never reduced obesity anywhere, ever. Alcohol taxes have little impact on the heavy drinkers and alcoholics whose health is realistic at risk. And tobacco taxes have to be sky high before they have the kind of effect campaigners expect, at a huge cost to those of us who choose to smoke. And that's the whole point. For example, in this country, in the UK, we've seen a huge reduction in terms of smoking rate. And surprisingly, it had nothing to do with taxes on cigarettes because that's been going on for a longer time. The two main reasons that we're seeing the smoking rate going down is one, the cultural change in the country and the mentality of children growing up in the UK, and two, the introduction of vaping. Oh, wait, so that means the free market already found a solution to smoking. But going back to the issue of giving power to the nanny state and big government telling us what to do because we're stupid apparently, there is a huge issue with the poor getting hit harder than anyone else. According to the Adam Smith Institute, being a consumption tax, it will hit the poorest the hardest. The poorest 10% of the UK households pay over 20% of their income on VAT and duties, over double the average. The introduction of a sugar tax will mostly affect the poor, changing the habits of the wealthy very little. Sin taxes are a higher proportion of low incomes than they are of high incomes. That makes them regressive taxes. There's nothing more to it. Also, sin taxes hit moderate and heavy users alike. Research has shown that previous rises in cigarette tax have made only 2.3% of smokers quit, with the other 97.7% just paying more in tax. Now, no one here is actually advocating for some sort of lawless anarchy society where no one cares about anyone. But the solutions that we are being introduced to by socialists, which are now being adopted by Theresa May's Conservative government, have never worked in the past, aren't working now, and will never work in the future. This is why we are in serious need of politicians who are pro-freedom, who are pro-logic and rational discussion when it comes to policy. And luckily, we have a Conservative candidate who could be our next Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, saying this.
Obesity is a huge public health challenge, probably now our number one public health challenge. It costs the NHS absolutely billions. We've got to deal with obesity, but we've got to do it in a way that is evidence-based. And what I want to see is evidence, actual evidence, that new taxes on this or that item of food and taxes which fall disproportionately on poorer families actually stop people from being so fat. All right? That's if I can put it that way. You've got to make sure that it's discouraging people from consuming what they're doing, or whether it's just a bit of a gesture. Now, everybody struggles with their weight. I know me no less than anybody else. We all know what the issues are. But my question is it really sensible to put a new tax on milkshakes, which will be paid disproportionately by poorer families, when the evidence seems to be, at the moment, ambiguous about whether those taxes actually reduce consumption and help people with their obesity? So that's the issue.
Now, thank God for politicians like Boris Johnson who are standing up for ordinary people and logic. This is in contrast to some depressing comments made by Jeremy Hunt recently, who seems to think it is his job to threaten businesses into forcing artificial sweeteners on consumers. The quickest way to deal with this crisis is for the people who manufacture milkshakes and other products to reduce the levels of sugar in those products, so that the taste doesn't change very much, but they are much healthier. So, you threaten them. You say, we have been prepared to legislate if you won't play ball. But in my experience, if you make that threat, you don't need to follow through with the dreaded milkshake tax. Wow, 1984 called and they won their big brother back. So let's hope that Boris Johnson becomes our next Prime Minister and stop this madness and this fight on personal liberty and logic. Thanks again for watching as usual. If you want to support this channel, make sure you check out the Cabinet Club. The link is in the description as usual. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell next to it. And I'll see you next week with a new video.